public is being conditioned to watch the skies for missiles. This is a strategic misdirection. Analysts at CSIS confirm the prohibitive kinetic cost of a launch-on-warning posture makes total war a low-probability scenario. The real vector of attack is not a mushroom cloud. It is silence. Global finance and military command and control are not concepts. They are physical realities. Trillions of dollars and terabytes of targeting data move through a handful of undersea fiber optic cables. This is the systemic vulnerability. While reports focus on China-linked APTs exploiting digital zero days in critical infrastructure, the primary asymmetric threat remains the physical severing of these data arteries. The second vector of silence is in low Earth orbit. Not kinetic anti-satellite weapons, but the militarization of commercial networks. Ukrainian specialists confirm that downed Russian attack drones are now equipped with Starlink-type satellite terminals. This is the blueprint. Turn a commercial advantage into a systemic liability. The goal is to blind the adversary, denying them the data supremacy that underwrites modern warfare. Cut the cables and blind the satellites, and what remains? A superpower with no senses. An entity with the world's most advanced kinetic arsenal, but no capacity for precision or de-escalation. This is the blind Leviathan. It still possesses overwhelming force, but its only response option is to strike blindly, transforming a contained crisis into a global solvency event. This is not a risk. It is a mathematical certainty. The pivot to asymmetric warfare is not a choice. It is a mathematical function of insolvency. A nation-state's power operates like a corporate balance sheet. Conventional assets, aircraft carriers, tank divisions, stealth bombers, carry an immense kinetic cost and an even greater replacement cost. When a state can no longer afford to wage, sustain, or absorb the losses of conventional conflict, it is functionally insolvent. Consider the Russian Federation. CSIS and RUSI analysis frames the war not as a simple military operation, but as a domestic liability of catastrophic scale. It is an unpopular conflict that acts as a systemic drain on financial liquidity and, more critically, on demographics. A state cannot project power abroad when it is bleeding out at home. This weakness forces a pivot. The objective changes. If you cannot win a symmetric, kinetic fight, you must make it impossible for your adversary to engage. You shift from high-cost assets to high-leverage vectors that attack the opponent's systemic vulnerabilities. This is not a fallback plan. It is the primary strategy dictated by economic reality. This blueprint is now active. Russia equips attack drones with commercial Starlink-type terminals, militarizing civilian technology to bypass billions in proprietary guidance system development. Simultaneously, the Hacker News reports China-linked groups are exploiting zero-day vulnerabilities in American critical infrastructure. The cost of the cyber weapon is negligible. The potential damage is systemic. This strategy is amplified by exploiting internal decay. When a superpower uses specialized assets like immigration agents for domestic protest policing, it signals a systemic strain. Adversaries do not see protests. They see a reallocation of security assets, a thinning of the perimeter. Weakness at home creates an asymmetric attack surface. A solvency crisis doesn't just mean a lack of money. It means a nation is too weak to afford a conventional war, forcing its hand toward a more dangerous, complex, and predictable escalation. The kinetic cost-exchange ratio has been inverted. According to analysis from the Royal United Services Institute, or RUSI, a $5 million main battle tank can now be neutralized by a $500 drone. This is not an unfavorable trade. It is a systemic solvency crisis for any military-industrial base built on expensive legacy platforms. The tank is no longer an asset. It is a $5 million liability on a battlefield saturated with cheap, precision-guided threats. This asymmetry creates what is now termed the democratization of violence. It decouples lethal kinetic capability from state-level industrial and economic power. The barrier to entry for projecting force has collapsed. Agile adversaries can now impose mathematically disproportionate costs on a superpower, creating attrition not through decisive battles, but through the liquidation of high-value assets at a rate that is economically unsustainable. This is deployed protocol. According to Ukrainian specialists examining a downed aircraft, Russia has equipped a BM-35 attack drone with a commercial Starlink-type satellite terminal. This is the militarization of commercial technology in its purest form, leveraging an adversary's own infrastructure to create an attack vector that bypasses conventional electronic warfare. A non-military system becomes a military accelerant. The result is a launch-on-warning posture for national economies. The certainty of this unfavorable cost exchange forces a strategic paralysis. Conventional forces cannot be deployed without facing immediate, low-cost liquidation. This deliberately removes conventional response options, forcing an escalation into other domains. The economic model for a legacy ground war is now mathematically insolvent. The primary battle space is no longer geographic, it is systemic. Adversaries are not seizing territory, they are stress-testing institutional solvency in designated gray zones. These are not failed states. They are proxy laboratories, deliberately selected to measure response times, quantify political will, and calibrate escalation ladders with mathematical precision. The blueprint is the weaponization of commercial systems. According to forensic analysis, Russian one-way attack drones are now being equipped with Starlink-type satellite terminals. This is not innovation, it is strategic arbitrage. A commercial consumer product is hijacked to provide resilient, low-cost command and control for a kinetic asset, bypassing billions in legacy military-grade investment. The Ukrainian theater serves as the live-fire laboratory for this model. Simultaneously, the digital gray zone is exploited to degrade critical infrastructure. Reports from the Hacker News confirm China-linked APTs are deploying zero-day exploits against Sitecore software. This is not random vandalism. It is a deliberate vector targeting the soft underbelly of the American economy, the commercial web platforms that power logistics, healthcare, and finance. The goal is to pre-position digital liabilities for future activation. The final laboratory is domestic. It is the exploitation of internal institutional decay. The deployment of immigration agents to police protests in Minneapolis, as documented, reveals a critical gap in training and jurisdiction. To an adversary, this is not a political issue. It is a data point. It confirms that internal friction can be used to misallocate federal assets, create legal chaos, and erode public trust in core institutions. It is a live test of the system's ability to police itself. CSIS analysts refer to areas of regional instability, such as recent warnings regarding South Africa, as proxy laboratories to model economic collapse or supply chain disruption. These are not the cause of systemic risk, they are the symptoms and staging grounds. Each event, a cyber breach, a hybrid drone, a domestic jurisdictional crisis, is a node on a single network designed to algorithmically remove a superpower's response options until only the most extreme, high-cost kinetic scenarios remain. The doctrine of launch on warning is a relic from an analog age. Its logic is brutal. To prevent a decapitation strike, a nation must launch its own nuclear arsenal the moment it confirms an inbound enemy launch, before the first warhead hits. The entire protocol depends on one variable: the integrity of early warning data. That variable is now compromised. According to reports from the Hacker News, China-linked APTs, Advanced Persistent Threats, are actively exploiting zero-day vulnerabilities in American critical infrastructure. These are not random attacks. This is systemic reconnaissance of the digital command and control backbone. Simultaneously, adversaries are militarizing commercial technology. After examining a downed drone, Ukrainian specialists confirmed that Russia is equipping attack drones with Starlink-type satellite terminals. This proves a critical point. Commercial systems, which our own military and civilian infrastructure leverage, are now battlefield assets and asymmetric vectors for attack. This creates the fog of digital war. An adversary doesn't need to launch a missile. They only need to blind the radar. A targeted cyber attack of the type CSIS warns is already being tested, creates a signal blackout. For the commander in the bunker, the screen goes dead. Is it a system failure, or is it the prelude to a kinetic strike that is currently 30 minutes away? Launch on warning protocol has no protocol for ambiguity. In that moment, the commander is forced to choose between two unacceptable outcomes: wait for confirmation and risk 100% annihilation, or follow protocol and launch based on the absence of data, potentially starting a war over a ghost in the machine. This is the weaponization of complexity. The adversary has created a solvency crisis in our decision-making loop. Their kinetic cost is zero. Our potential kinetic cost is everything. The math is irrefutable. As the frequency of these low-level cyber frictions increases, the probability of a high-level strategic escalation approaches mathematical certainty. The thesis of weaponized complexity is not an academic exercise. It is a live operational blueprint. Within the next 12 months, expect a systemic calibration shot against U.S. critical infrastructure, designed to be attribution impossible. The target vector will be a Tier 1 logistics hub, a major port, or a data interchange. The event will manifest as a cascading data failure, not a kinetic explosion. It will be publicly framed as a catastrophic software update or a ransomware attack. The mechanism has already been proven. China-linked APTs are confirmed to be exploiting zero-day vulnerabilities in commercial software used by American critical infrastructure, per the Hacker News. This is not theoretical. It is an active campaign. Adversaries are simultaneously militarizing commercial technology, as seen with Russia equipping attack drones with Starlink-type terminals. This demonstrates the blueprint: leverage low-cost, off-the-shelf systems to create high-cost, asymmetric liabilities for a superpower. The final accelerant is internal institutional decay. While federal assets are diverted to police domestic protests, a role for which experts warn of training gaps, the perimeter of systemic risk is left undefended. This creates the perfect operational window. The calibration event will last approximately 72 hours. The objective is not destruction, but data collection, to measure the kinetic cost of a digital blockade and test the solvency of the response architecture. The math of escalation will be calculated. Then the true strike will be prepared.